All right, friends, welcome back again to another episode of Tactical Enlightenment. Our YouTube channel is dedicated to helping players out there get better at Bannerlord through the use of field command and battlefield tactics. And we are going to be renewing an episode here. This is going to be episode 1 of our Intermediate Tactics series. We're going to use a custom battle and focus on troop formations, troop movement, and the use of elevation to win battles. And what we've done here is we've created a custom battle. You have this menu accessible. You can do the same thing, and I recommend you try this for practice. We have all the units selected with one minor noble clan, everybody except recruits, right? And so what we've done here is we've created effectively equal-sized armies and equal-strength armies, right? You go into all these and they're the same for both sides. Incidentally, this troop army composition is pretty similar to what you're going to be having in a lot of your battles. You'll have a good amount of infantry and archers, a smaller amount of cav, and then you may have some horse archers sprinkled in there. Now for this demonstration, we're going to fight in summertime in broad daylight so that visually the battle is easy for you to see as a relatively newer battlefield commander. Additionally, the army size for both sides, of course, is 500. And into battle we go. So now I'm going to talk extensively in this episode about formations and then using those formations, because from your F control, right, after you select a unit, in this case we have infantry is the first, archers is the second, cav is the third division, and horse archers is the fourth, right? These are our 4 army groups. These different units have effectively 2 different things that you can tell them to do. The first is you can tell them what to do and how to do it. And what I mean by that is you can tell these guys to attack, right? There are different command branches for things like attack and stuff like that, and that is your F1 button, right? You see here it says follow me, charge, engage, fall back, retreat, stop, etc., right? And the other button you're going to be using a lot is your F2 button, and that is your formations, right? These are the primary 2 buttons you're going to want to be using. So you click your unit, let's say infantry, and then you're going to want to go F1, and then you're giving them an order, right? A lot of times it's going to be charge, maybe it's going to be follow me, but that's your primary button. The other one you're going to be using is F2, and a lot of this we're going to set up today and look at today in this pre-battle setup, right? This is what happens before a battle. You get this nice period of time. It's actually unlimited to look at your battlefield, assess the terrain, try to come up with a plan, and sort of figure out how you want to place your troops. You have all the time in the world at this stage to move your units around, right? So we're going to actually zoom in here. Our infantry is a mix of different guys. Now you could specialize this, and over the course of this series, if you watch the Intermediate Tactics series, it will explain to you how and why you might start to separate your army and start to use some of these other tabs over here, right? We could put archers in the 5th division and infantry in the 6th, but for the sake of simplicity, we're going to start you off by learning 4 different divisions, and I strongly recommend relatively new players use just 4 divisions, right? Now you have to have 4 divisions in this case. If I try to remove one of these, it says you have to have at least 1 formation of this type. In other words, you can't join your cavalry and infantry at the beginning of a battle. Right, so you have this period in time, and we're going to explore a little bit. We're going to explore mostly formations. I'm going to talk about formations. Now, formations is essentially how your troops look on the battlefield, right? Your traditional one, and this is all going to be the F2, so you select your units, which is 1 for the infantry, and then the F2 button, and then all of these formations are possible. So you're hitting F2 twice for shield wall. You're hitting F2 and then F3 for loose, right? So again, the order is infantry, select number 1, F2, F3. Now they're in loose, F1, or I select the first infantry, F2, F2, and they go into shield wall. Right, we're going to talk about different formations for each different unit type, and this to me is by far the most dynamic, interesting part about Bannerlord, because you can do all kinds of things. I can tell my infantry, hey, let's be in a giant circle. Actually, you know what? I want you guys in a square. Actually, I changed my mind. I want you guys in a skein. I want you guys in essentially like an inverted triangle, right? And these guys will shift to these various formations. So you have units, and you can use them that way. And of course, you can do the same thing with your other divisions. Here I've got my archers. They're also in a skein, right? Now, you're allowed to do any of this. You're allowed to effectively put your archers in a square, which obviously would be suboptimal. There's all sorts of different things, but the point is that you as the commander have 2 different major jobs. Well, 3 really. It's telling your archers what to do, what formation to be in, and then once they're in that formation, what to do, right? I can tell these guys, I want you to charge, right? Or, hey, wait, I want you guys to stop. Don't charge. you have all those options within your command. And in fact, if you don't tell your units what to do and you haven't delegated that to the computer, then they will just do whatever you tell them to do and they won't leave that position, right? They're highly obedient unless they rout, right? If you start to suffer serious losses, a whole unit may rout, right? If our infantry is just being surrounded by the enemy cavalry and pummeled by arrows, they may rout, at which point you lose control of that unit, okay? All right, so we're going to talk about formations for each individual division, and we'll start off with infantry. Now, I want to add one more little wrinkle to this. In addition to all these different formations, right, I can do line, shield wall, loose, circle, square, etc. You have another variable, because once it's in that formation, you can actually change what it looks like. These guys are in line, but you can make them tighter. I can make them in a line where it looks, frankly, like a square. I can also take them and make them in a line like that, where it looks like a line of people ready to vote or at the food bank or something like that, right? These guys are all single file now. They're still in the line command, and this works with a lot of the different formations. If I have them in a skein, now with them separated like this, you get this giant inverted triangle, just like so. Now, there are optimal formations, and what I mean by that is there's nothing at all that says that you can't run your infantry in a column, except for the fact that this works like dog shit. You don't want your guys in a column because this has been tested by other players, just by experience, by common sense, and it doesn't fucking work, right? So ultimately there are a handful of formations that you're going to want to have units in, and if you deviate from that, you're likely to experience failure. So line infantry is really good for movement. If I have my infantry and they're back here and I want them to attack the enemy's infantry that's over there, line is actually one of the best formations because they move fast. When they're line formation, they're not focused on holding up their shield. They're basically trying to get from point A to point B. So movement for all troops, you're going to want to have them in line formation. And that's just hit the unit, 1, F2 and F1, right? Now this will get easier the more you do this. It's overwhelming at first. That's why I'm only having you command 4 armies. That's why I would recommend you experiment in this stage of the battle. Nothing's happening. Our guys aren't being killed. The enemy's not routing us. They're not slamming us with cav. We have all the time in the world just to fart around with stuff, look at different formations, and then play with it. Because once you put your units into a formation, using the little spread guy here, the little icon, right? You put it, you hold down left, or maybe with the console it's a little different. You can basically decide what that formation looks like, right? You can decide where they are too. Say I want my infantry at an angle. All of these options are available for you. Now, the great part about this for Bannerlord is that this is a little bit like a chili cook-off where there's 150 contestants or 1,000 contestants. Everybody's chili might be a little different. The way you end up playing might be very different than how I'm teaching here, and that's totally fine. But it's probable that some of the tips I'm giving you will be integrated into your final style of play. Certainly some of the very basic things you're going to want to pick up simply because it's been tested by thousands or millions or whatever of other players, and it's the best strategy. So I'll talk about infantry first. What is optimal? Now, infantry's job, of course, besides protecting our archers from the enemy cav and infantry, is to block arrows, right? They're going to be getting shot at by archers. And so a very common strategy is to have your infantry in what's called a shield wall. Now, again, this is an example of where if you put your shield wall in a big long line, you might think, well, great, I can protect a large area and all of my archers here in the 2nd Division will be protected because the enemy will have to go through our infantry to get to those guys with arrows, so those archers. These delicate guys here, you want to protect them with your infantry. The problem is if your infantry shield wall is in a line like this, if you zoom in, and of course I know this from experience, some of these guys don't have shields. There are different types of infantry in Bannerlord, and some of your guys do not have a shield, right? They have a big pole arm. They might have an axe if you're a sturgeon, and they're helpless to arrows. Now, unfortunately, they're not Neo. They can't dodge incoming projectiles, and so if you have them in a big shield wall like this, these guys that don't have shields are basically just sitting ducks. They will stand there dutifully taking arrows until they die, right? Or until something else changes. So what I want to recommend is you do a shield wall with your units 2 units deep. I got my commands a little mixed up there. Even as a veteran of 1,000 battles, sometimes I still do the wrong thing. There's a myriad of different things where you're going to have to connect your brain to your controller of choice, your mouse, your keyboard, your controller, and start to make it where it's fluid, right? You want to be able to do these things very quickly. Now, lovely, again, before the battle, this is a very slow process. So we can make all those mistakes we want. We can have our infantry set up here on the side, and it's very easy to correct. We can have our infantry and say, hey, I want them in a nice shield wall. Oops, I hit the wrong button. No problem. You have plenty of time to fix it. So this is your time to really sort of play around with it, make adjustments, see what you can do with them before the battle starts. Now here's what I'm going to recommend. Your shield wall be 2 men deep, because the AI, the way it's designed, fortunately, it puts your guys that don't have shields, like this fella right here. It's a little hard to see, but this guy does not have a shield. He's behind 2 guys who do. Right, so if your shield wall is 2 men deep, there might be a few guys at the edge here that don't have shields, but all of these guys at the back here in the center part, they will all be defended with guys with shields. If you want to do this, that's fine. You can have a small shield wall, but understand, if you're trying to protect your archers, and this is what your archers look like, these guys are not protected. Similarly, if your archers are in, spread formation and they look like that, well, as soon as the enemy heavy cavalry starts charging in here, these guys are fucked, right? They don't have any support. They feel like they're left hang out to dry here by their infantry, and these guys are fucked. So with our formations here, with our infantry, what I recommend is shield wall, and either 1.5 men kind of deep like that, or 2 men deep, and it looks something like that. That way those guys are highly protected from arrows. The guys in the back that don't have shields, they have some protection, and you've got a much better chance of surviving the enemy arrow onslaught, which is going to happen, right? That's part of the game, especially in this battle. There's going to be what I would call a jousting battle between the archers at the beginning of the game, right? All right, so infantry, shield wall is good. Line, again, the line is F2 and then F1. That's good for movement, but as soon as they get close to their target, I would recommend a shield wall, because shield wall also works pretty good for fighting. Then you can do things like a square. I've got no problem with your infantry in a square if they're being totally mauled and attacked in lots of different directions. Say for some reason the enemy decides to focus on your infantry, or it's surrounded by horse archers and enemy cavalry. Square is actually really efficient because it protects those units, right? The enemy heavy cav can't really penetrate this because there's so much mass of people in there. Shields, spears. You could literally stand in the middle of this square, and as long as you weren't on your horse, you'd be very hard to kill. So this might actually be a nice place for a new commander to stand. You might even make a whole division just literally to stand around you in a battle to protect you while you give your units order. Now you're going to have a hard time seeing. It's not optimal for it, but it is an option to think about. All right, so infantry in a square, infantry in a skein. A skein is this upside down triangle here. This, you can sort of think of it like a V form. This is viable, but until you start to play the game more and sort of understand the game mechanics, I'm going to recommend a shield wall, and that's what we're going to do for this battle. Right, I'm going to try to not make this a 5-hour episode. There are so many different variables that you can do in this game, right? I can just do all these different things with my archers, and if you do too many different things, eventually you get overwhelmed. We're going to keep it relatively simple. Infantry in a shield wall, 2 men deep, archers behind them spread out. And the reason is simple. If you have your archers tightly compacted, say I have my archers in line, as the enemy's shooting arrows at them, sometimes arrows will miss just slightly. Instead of hitting this poor guy here at the front, he's happy, the arrow missed him, and it kills his friend behind him. You don't want that to happen, right? You want their arrows hitting the dirt instead of your men. So I recommend a spread, and I recommend it either slightly bigger than your infantry line, or I have no problem with this. If you want to give them even more protection, you can make it more compacted. Now, they have a limited amount of range, which we'll get to elevation in just a second, but your range is less, of course, if they're further back. If they're too close to your infantry, they can't fucking shoot. These guys have to have line of sight, and if they have a big guy, especially if they're right next to him, these guys can't shoot. These guys, literally, you're going to see them just standing there, and you're going to shake your fist at them when actually it's your fault. You need to position them so they have a little bit of distance behind their infantry. Now, it's better on elevation like this, because what happens is it's just like a movie theater. These guys can see sort of downhill beyond their troops, right? So I would recommend something that looks very similar to that, and that's what we're going to use for this battle. Okay, they're protected from an infantry charge. They're protected from some of the arrows coming at them from the enemy, and they're spread out so they don't take arrows in the face. Right, that's a critical battle component. Don't take an arrow in the eyeball. Very bad for your group. Right. So our cav is here, 86 guys, and for now we're actually just going to have these guys in line formation. There are different formations, of course, you can use your cav with. Right. Sometimes I get my archers and cav confused because in my campaign, my cav unit is always the second unit. So I might actually finger fuck that a few times in this battle. We'll just do the best we can. Now, shield wall works tremendously well for cav. What this does is these guys hold their shields and spears out. They're not doing it now, but these guys become very difficult to penetrate, very difficult for enemy cav to break through, and very difficult. You see there again, I'm using my archers instead of my cav by mistake. Very difficult for enemy infantry and enemy cav to destroy. Similarly, square is very tough. It's very difficult for the enemy to penetrate this and kill this unit quickly. Right, so there are lots of different options. Of course, there's even the skein, right? You can put these guys in a skein, and theoretically, this is a common formation that they would use to charge the enemy, right? Something like a wedge like this, and it would sort of envelop and penetrate the enemy lines. It doesn't work particularly well for Bannerlord, so today we are simply going to be using two formations. We're going to use line, kind of compacted like this, and we'll use shield wall. Have had some guys say that square, having them, and by the way, you can have them in a square and tell them to charge, right? It's just not the same effect of having them spread out in a situation where you want them to sort of rampage through the opponent, right? So we're going to put these guys back into line formation, and what we're actually going to be doing with them is manually controlling them in the easiest way, and that is by driving these guys around like a train. Well, how do you do that? I mentioned it before, but you have the F2 button, which does all of your different formations. The F1 button, that is your button of motion. You can think of the F2 button is how they're going to do it, and you can think of the F1 button as what they're going to do. You could have them retreat in a skein, right? You have basically all these different options, right? Some of these are self-explanatory. Some of these you will have to fiddle with in-game before you really understand what they mean. For most units, when you say engage and charge, it's the same thing. But your archers, when you say engage, they will tend to skirmish a little bit. They will tend to kind of move forward and backwards. You might even see them just flat out running, and that's because they feel like they're too close to the enemy. The engage is effectively telling them to sort of skirmish. Keep distance between you and the enemy, but if you have plenty of distance, shoot. And if you don't have enough distance, run towards the enemy, right? You can sort of consider it like they're on a tether. They're not going to get too close to the enemy, but they'll try not to get too far away. Right? Charge works for archers too, by the way. Obviously, it works better for infantry and cav, but your charge for your archers, anybody who's out of ammunition will then join the battle. The reason it's not a great command, of course, is that if there's like 7 guys that are out of ammo and the rest aren't, those 7 poor saps are going to charge forward and get hammered probably. It's better to either have everybody shooting or everybody charging. Now, to make archers charge, and I'm not going to get too far into the weeds on this, but you can do that. You can tell your archers, hold fire. Now, if I tell these guys to hold fire and then charge, what they will do is they will put their bows down, pull out their little tiny weapon, and charge. Okay? They will all charge in unison, even if they have ammunition left, and that's because we've told them specifically, do not fire. Now, we're not going to do it at the beginning of the battle here. Here, we're actually going to tell them to shoot. I just want you to know that's another option with your archers. So we're going to be using our cav, mostly to counterattack the enemy. And we're going to use our horse archers, right? Our horse archers, it doesn't really matter. Some people like to have their horse archers and scatter. If you tell your horse archers engage, similarly, they will sort of skirmish around the edge of the enemy. In this battle, we're not going to fuck with that at all. We're going to make this as simple as possible. We've got the minimum 4 divisions here, and we're effectively going to just drive our cav and horse archers around. We may position them occasionally with the pointer button, but all we're going to do in this battle is attack the enemy at range, using elevation. In fact, I'm going to tell everybody to hold fire for just a second because I want to save ammunition. I'll talk about that in just a second. But we're going to wait for the enemy to approach us, and then we're going to begin shooting the enemy. I'm going to have our 2 different cav divisions follow me, which again, I select the cavalry. And by the way, feel free to use this slow motion option, right? And if you have the option selected, when you hit their unit command, it slows the game down. Your motions are still present. You can still turn your horse and whatnot, but it's slowed down. And as a new player learning the game, I would recommend this as a viable strategy so that you don't get overwhelmed by the speed of the game. It's clear the developers wanted this in there so that you could use this, right? So once I've selected the cavalry, they light up there. You can see their feet are fucking glowing neon green like they walked into Chernobyl. And then I'm going to have these guys F1, F2. And what that does is they follow us. Now you can see the enemy shooting at us here, right? You can actually hear the arrows hitting. We're sort of observing our formations. And now I want to focus on one more thing. There's 2 different numbers when you bring up this menu. When you select a number, the other thing it does is it shows you the enemy units, and it shows you a number of distance that they are away. You can consider it like yards. The top number on that cav division there that I'm looking at, the top number is 43. That's how many cavalry, individual men on horses there are. The lower number is how far they are away in terms of yards. You can see the numbers going down. That's because, of course, they're getting closer to us. The reason I wanted to talk about that is that the effective solid range, the range at which archers begin to really start doing damage with their arrows is about 150 units. I would not begin shooting your enemy until they're closer than about 180, maybe 200 units. Now, this option's only available for some beta, for some computer versions, but I've selected my horse archers here. I've selected my cav here, and I've now told them by clicking on this horse archer unit of the enemy, I've told my units, attack them, kill them. Okay, they will then focus their energy on those units because these horse archers are sort of behind our units, and they are shooting at our various different troops here. Now, ironically, I may have to shoot this battle over again because I took like a point blank shot there from one of their horse archers, and as you can see, it did like 3/4 damage to me. So I may have to be a little bit more defensive here and try not to get shot off my mount. Now you notice the spam in the upper right corner there. That's the death spam. Every time there's a green spam, that's one of our units killing one of theirs. Of course, it was mostly green because the enemy was isolated. Their horse archers were behind us here, and they got mauled by our cav, right? Our horse archers and cav were both attacking them, which is one of the strategies you're going to want to use in Bannerlord. This is called attacking the enemy in concentrated forces. Right, what we're doing is, in that case, we're attacking the enemy with our archers. You can see our archers are down there shooting. When the horse archers were behind us, they were shooting at the enemy horse archers. And then I told our cav divisions and horse archer division to charge the enemy horse archers. That's basically 3 of our units told to gang up on the enemy at the same time. And that's a critical part of Bannerlord. Anytime you can fight in a bar, and you and your friend and your other big friend can attack one opponent in the bar instead of 3 of you against 3 of their guys one-on-one, you should take it because that's advantageous to your odds, right? 3 of you are going to kick the shit out of one guy, and then you can move on to the next guy, right? It's focused, concentrated firepower. All right, so I'm going to slow it down again because their infantry has decided it's time to charge, or at least they're approaching us. So I have these cav divisions charging us, and we're going to effectively try to disrupt and attack this infantry division with multiple units at the same time. Again, feel free to slow this part down. Now, their infantry is actually, their archers rather, actually charging closer to us here, and their cav units kind of coming in the side. All I'm doing is dragging my cav to sort of intercept their units, right? I dragged them right in front of their cavalry. And now, again, all I'm doing is dragging our units because I want to get, yeah, I had to block this fuck. I want to get our cav and drive it right through the enemy archers here. You see the archers here, they're shooting at us, they're trying to kill me. Now my cav is effectively driving right through. You can see them just smoking their guys, hitting them, running them over. We're going to drive our cav right through their units, and now that they're sort of amongst their archers, I want them to attack. So I go up to the commands, F1, F3, charge. And those guys then charge into their archers, right? Now, the enemy's doing something similar. In the back, you can see what's going on here. The enemy cav is in here sort of in smaller numbers, but they are attacking our archers back here. That is fine. Okay. So now here's another component of it. The enemy infantry is now pounding on our infantry. So again, I tell our cav, follow me, because what I want these guys to do is attack the enemy infantry. So I'm dragging them towards me, and now that they're close, it's just like before, F1, F3, but we're going to combine it. I have these infantry here that were holding the line dutifully. Now I tell them to charge, right? F1, F3. Again, I'm doing it a little quicker than you may want to do it when you're first starting, but you're telling both of those units to charge. So the cav is now charging, and the infantry is now charging. And what happens is the enemy is getting pinched between these 2 different attacks. You can actually see the number of infantry there. If I focus on it, right now I'm focused on the enemy infantry. They have 97 guys, 93 guys. You see the number on top there going down. And you see our number right next to it. That's our infantry attacking them. And it's a bigger number, 123 to 75, etc., etc. That's because we attacked the enemy infantry here with combined forces, right? We attacked him with multiple units. This guy right here is routing. That means he's lost enough morale where he says, fuck it, I'm out of here. This battle has gone badly. In fact, you can see the death spam now is mostly green, right? The enemy is really being fucking killed badly. And so this battle, it really is already over, but again, we're going to kind of slow things down here, and I'm going to talk about a few more things here before this battle sort of finishes off. Why do you want elevation? I want to make sure I sneak this part into the end of this episode. I probably could have put it into an earlier point, but there are physical reasons. You can actually see the battle's over. In fact, that combined attack we made, combined with the elevation that we had, even though our forces were equal in strength, we utterly destroyed the enemy here. Right? We have 319 guys left out of the 500, and again, the force sizes the strengths and sizes were equal, and the enemy, they're dead. They have 438 guys dead and 55 guys that are routing, that are running for the hills, and these guys are being actively cut down by our troops. The reason that this was so decisive, this battle was so lopsided in our favor, is twofold. The first is we used combined attacks. When the enemy's infantry was coming in, they got pummeled between our cav and our infantry, right? A combined attack. And incidentally, there is a tactic that this is often referred to called the hammer and anvil. The idea being that you hold the line with infantry, and then as the infantry comes up to attack your infantry, you drive a bunch of angry heavy horsemen right into the back of these undefended infantry. And of course, just like putting your hand on an anvil and smashing it with a hammer, there's massive damage that follows that, right? And that's exactly what happened. The enemy charged our infantry line uphill, and they got hammered from behind by our cav unit. Okay, now here's the other reason we destroyed them in this battle. We destroyed them because of elevation. Elevation in Bannerlord is a critical component of success. Now, as you'll see in some of the advanced videos, if you continue to watch our series, elevation is not always to your advantage. There are times where you actually want to give up the high ground, but you as a new player, I would always recommend that you take the high ground. Always. Right? If you can position your archers in a way so that they can shoot downhill, if you can position your calves so they can run downhill at the enemy, and the enemies have to shoot uphill and run uphill to get you, you will be successful more often than not. I mean, assuming all things equal. And the reason for that is game physics. If you don't know, Bannerlord has a pretty decent physics model when it comes to how damage is calculated, how the system sort of deals out damage. And units that are moving faster do more damage. So if I'm trotting like this and I swing my sword at someone, it's going to do way less damage than if I'm at a full fucking sprint and I come through here and hammer him at full speed, right? Just like if you were to think of Happy Gilmore with his golfing posture, right? He clubs the ball 500 yards because he's fucking running at the golf ball. It's a part of physics, and it's plumbed into Bannerlord. So just like that, my horse is running slower. I'm going uphill and I'm on full throttle and it's slower. Whereas if I get my horse and all the other horse running downhill, they move faster. That means our horses that are running downhill do more damage than horses of the enemy running uphill, right? So that's a critical component of elevation. The other big one is archers, right? I have my archer corps here. It was a bit of an archer duel at the beginning of that battle. Well, archers gain more range with their arrows shooting downhill. The arrows go faster because of physics, right? If you shoot an arrow off the top of a mountain, by the time it hits the bottom somewhere, it's still probably going really fast. And also they go further, right? You could throw a rock off the top of a building way further than you could throw it if you were just standing on the ground, right? These are pretty simple ideas, but when you apply them to Bannerlord, hopefully it helps you understand why elevation is so critical. There are other reasons, such as better line of sight for your units, such as better line of sight for you, the commander. If you're uphill, sometimes it's very difficult to see what the fuck is going on simply because your line of sight is not so good, right? So elevation is a critical part of Bannerlord, and is something that I implore you take advantage of at all times. Even in my advanced campaign, you'll see me frequently taking the high ground, just like Star Wars, right? Anakin had the low ground and he got fucking destroyed, right? So take the high ground, concentrate your forces in a battle like this, command your units confidently, and subscribe to the channel. That is the key. That is the key for you dominating at Bannerlord. So this is episode number 1. We've redone this episode. The main reason I did that is for clarity, a little better audio quality. I'm hoping people can understand and hear what I'm saying better, of course, because if I can't convey my message to you, then there's no point no point at all, right? You don't learn anything from a professor working outside a construction site because you can't hear the fucking guy, right? So hopefully the audio quality for this is much better, and hopefully the way that I've laid this out, I was able to articulate effectively a way for you to have success with a very minimal amount of sort of real-time computations on your end, right? You didn't see us doing anything fancy in this battle, and yet here we are, massively victorious, right? So if you're interested in more of this, friends, please subscribe. Please watch the rest of this intermediate tactics series. We continue to pump out new videos, and of course, there's a whole advanced side to combat as well. If you're interested in becoming a badass on the battlefield, right, a modern-day Alexander, or you want to dominate people like Napoleon, please subscribe to the channel. I'm confident I can help all but the very best of players get better at Bannerlord. So thanks again for watching, friends. I will see you guys out there, and I wish you guys the best of luck.